piece, and we'll begin with the Jets versus the Bills. This game in Buffalo, and pretty low over/under in this one. 39 implied total points for this one. Bills 23, Jets 16. So Vegas is expecting this one to be a low score game, and I'm pretty sure Vegas is pretty accurate on this one. Obviously, the Jets, one of the worst offenses in the league last year, and the Bills, pretty well played when going against, poor opponents and average versus decent opponents. Last year, the Jets were pretty average on defense overall. I mean, they were pretty good at stopping the tight ends, but running backs, they were number 20, wide receivers 19, quarterbacks right in the middle at 16, and losing Jamal Adams, losing CJ Mosley. Probably going to take a little step back in the defensive department, but still expecting them to be, okay on defense and pretty slow offense, not really forcing the other team to have to score too many points. And then the Bills, tremendous defense last year, at least through the air, average against the run, but really good against the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight end group. So this should be a defensive battle for sure. Expecting it kind of go how Vegas implies. So in terms of who we're looking at in this one, I think you're okay. This is the stretch of games where you're going to want to start Josh Allen. You drafted him. You want to start him. I get it. This is probably going to be, the first half of the season is going to be where he's going to get the majority of his fantasy points before that schedule turns difficult. And with that, I am comfortable starting Stefon Diggs in this one. Likely, if you drafted Stefon Diggs, you're going to go through the same conundrum every week that you never really can bench him because you never know when he's going to blow up. But especially in a matchup like this, I'm comfortable starting Stefon Diggs. And the Bills defense, arguably the best defense on the week, playing against Sam Darnold and an offense that we're not expecting to do too much. In terms of players that I would try to avoid this week, although it's not a requirement, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. The situation in camp right now is looking like these guys are going to be pretty close to a 50-50 split. It might be a hot hand approach. It might be Singletary gets to work to start the game and Moss grinds it out towards the end. Since we're not expecting a lot of points being scored in this game, I'm not sure that we can really trust either of them. One of them will probably end up having a decent game, but at this point, it's kind of a toss-up for me to really say who it's going to be. So unless you're in a situation where you have to start one of them, I'd kind of like to play the waiting game and see how the situation works itself out, especially if you have both. And then in terms of, other receivers on this team, you can start John Brown, but I'm not expecting there to be a lot of points scored. So I'm probably only comfortable starting Diggs, and I would leave John Brown on my bench to see what type of a target split there actually is. I mean, I would not be surprised if Stefon Diggs and John Brown end up finishing pretty close to each other in terms of fantasy points scored this year. But this week, I would prefer Stefon Diggs. And then I'm not going to start Cole Beasley, and I'm definitely not starting Dawson Knox. We'll have to see if he can take a step forward at all this year, but against the Jets, who had a pretty good defense against tight ends last year, we'll leave that one on the table. All right, looking at the Jets, pretty much the only guys I am comfortable starting in this game are Le'Veon Bell and Jamison Crowder. Both of those guys should get a lot of targets, and even in a game where we expect the Bills to win, pretty handedly, I do think that there's going to be enough targets to go around to feed Bell and Crowder in this one. Crowder against the Bills last year in week 1 had 17 targets. He's not going to get a lot of yards, but he'll get plenty of work in PPR leagues. Now, Chris Herndon is an interesting situation. I am okay starting him if you do not have a better option. But if you have a better option, like you've drafted someone earlier in the draft, like a Tyler Higbee, a Hayden Hurst, I would much rather have a safer option like that this week. I do think Herndon could get a decent amount of targets, considering that Perriman and Mims are hurt, but Herndon's also dealing with an injury of his own. And the Bills were really, really good at locking down the tight end last year. Their defense is pretty solid, and they didn't really lose a lot of key pieces. So probably would pivot off of Herndon this week, but keep him on your bench. Better days are coming for him. And probably not going to start the Jets defense really much at any point this year, but definitely not this week. And I would not be looking to throw out either Perriman or Mims or Darnold this week going against the Bills defense. Not a good idea. And then Frank Gore, we'll see what the usage splits are. But going against a really tough defense, I think Bell is the only running back you could start here because of his pass catching upside. I don't really think that Frank Gore is going to be involved in the passing game, and probably not going to be someone that you want to start in a game that you would be looking at in terms of low rushing volume. All right. So in terms of our prediction for this one, right now we are looking at the Bills winning this one pretty handedly. I had the Bills winning 23-14, so I think this is hitting the under for this one, but I do have the Bills covering. So pretty expecting the Jets to not really show up too much for this one.